want to do the intro since you know that shit better than I do?
All right. This is Black Iron Jim, the Ironcast. Keegan and Ryeface here. We're going to do an Iron Pirate takeover, which just means it's a podcast with just the guys today.
No chicks allowed.
No chicks. We are brought to you by
That's
Caveman.
politically correct, right? Sweet.
Yeah. Don't assume their gender.
Thank you. That's a good point.
Yeah.
I apologize.
We are brought to you by Caveman Coffee and Gnarly Nutrition and sort of Reebok, but not really. But they sent us a lot of nice stuff. But, so did Slingshot. So we're kind of sponsored by everybody.
Sweet.
In a way.
Inadvertently sponsored by a bunch of people that
By our
aren't
friends.
sponsored, that don't sponsor us.
Yeah, by all of our friends.
So we're doing an athlete camp this weekend at Black Iron Gym. I enlisted the help of some of the best coaches, I think, in the industry in their respective fields. So Jesse's here, coaching powerlifting and helping out with squats and deadlifts and everything else that he's awesome at and knows a bunch of shit about that I don't know a lot of people that know as much as he does. So he's out here helping. Jared Fleming's out here as well, and we'll get him on this sometime next week. But also, Jeremey Avilla was in the area, who is one of Jesse's athletes. So I thought it'd be interesting to have him on the podcast as well. So we could kind of, bounce back and forth between coach and athlete and kind of get Jeremy's perspective on Jesse and hopefully Jesse's perspective on Jeremey.
Oh, I didn't know it was going to be that kind of a podcast.
I don't really know where this is going to go.
Right. Little known fact. We actually, us three, when we trained together, we actually had a boy band.
Really?
We did.
We did.
What was it called?
We didn't have a name, record anything, but we had a sick album cover.
We did.
That's about all we had.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
And it was called?
I don't know.
We're running out of Mondays.
We're running out of Mondays.
How'd that come about?
I was leaving because I was moving.
You'll get used to that. Just wait.
Yeah, right.
I was doing what I always do, and right around August, I was packing up my house or apartment and moving to a totally different state for no particular reason at all. And one day we realized that we only had so many Mondays left.
Damn.
And thus started one of the sweetest boy band covers of all time without actually having talent or songs or anything that actually creates a boy band.
I'm going to need to get that pic so I can put
We
it
nailed
out
it. I think, I'm pretty sure I have that. You have that.
I got a pic, yeah. I actually have a video too.
Oh.
It was a little different though. Like none of us had frosted tips. Most of us had beards. So a little different than your typical boy band. But
Interesting.
But still, we
You got to break the mold,
we had charisma.
so if anybody wants to write a song for "We're Running Out of Mondays," we'd be more than happy to hear it.
Yes. So Ryan, did you made those donuts that were down there?
I did.
How the fuck did you learn how to do that?
Amazing, right?
Those are so good.
Thank you.
Those were dense.
Yeah.
Full of
Like how much like what would the nutritional facts on those donuts be? Just like
diabetes?
Just frightening, right?
They are no calorie, high protein, low carb,
Non-GMO.
keto,
Yeah.
keto friendly.
Sure.
Those ones actually aren't too bad in terms of the nutrition. There's not a lot of fat in them, but there are a lot of carbs.
Yeah.
But everybody worked out today, so it's fine. Go straight to your gains.
There you go. So they're Gaines donuts.
Yeah.
But those are really, really good. Those
Thank
are
you.
amazing.
Thank you. I've since Chrissy and I used to live in New York, I kind of just started being like, it'd be fun to learn that. So I've just been teaching myself. There's been versions where I've used by weight 50% butter.
Nice.
So, but I didn't do those.
I thought they tasted great,
They
and the
were
fact
really
that you
good.
just self-taught yourself how to make donuts that taste that good is pretty fucking amazing.
How do you is that a YouTube thing? You can just look up how to make donuts, or you're taking some sort of online correspondence course?
I bought a lot of cookbooks, and then it's kind of I would just make them, make one recipe and be like, okay, that's what happens here. Make another one, be like, oh, okay, here's the difference. Oh, I wonder what if I did this. And it's kind of just a process.
It's like a trial and error kind of thing.
And it's like, okay, well, I like this about this. I like this about this. So what about both? It's kind of like,
Okay.
I kind of taught myself how to do fitness the same way because I got into it before social media, and it's kind of like
So you had no clue what you were doing.
yeah, and it slowly just
Social
slowly-
media.
Do any of us really know?
Social media teaches us everything that we know nowadays.
Yeah.
So between when you started making your donuts and now, rough estimate, first number that pops into your head, how many donuts have you had?
Oh God.
That's a good number.
And then can
Yeah.
we also see what kind of weight gain?
Yeah. When I moved to New York, I was 180, and now I'm 230.
Nice. That's a good amount of
So,
donuts.
so 50 pounds of donuts.
that's
That's unreal.
That's a good percentage. That's a good.
Yeah.
But I appreciate your sacrifice of
Thank
you.
your
Thank
aesthetics for how those donuts tasted.
Agreed.
You know what?
You did a good thing.
I went from like when I moved to New York, I was at a 375 deadlift, and now I'm sitting next to somebody that's like, oh, my max is gonna be his warm up, but like 500.
That's awesome.
505.
That's great.
So I mean, it didn't all go to my gut, but a good portion of
A
it.
little bit went to your deadlift.
A little bit.
Good.
So speaking of your deadlift, Jeremy, how is training going these days, and what are your
Yeah,
what are your
throw out them
plans?
stats. Throw out them stats too.
I have more personal questions, but I'm going to wait until you start talking and getting to the flow of this.
All right, let's see. Right now, what is the question? How's training going?
Well, let's see. Let's talk about your last meet, which is
Last-
probably what you don't want to talk about.
I know, I don't mind.
So what happened?
Well,
Not like I know what happened, but like tell us
the
about the
people
meet,
know.
and then we'll go from there.
it didn't go as I wanted it. Is the short answer. But last meet was fine. Training for it, the preparation for it was awesome. I learned a lot. It's my first time I've done a big cut.
What was the cut?
The cut was I was probably about 18 pounds or so, something like that. Probably about 18 pounds. We did like the start of the week and did the water cut and all that kind of good stuff. And I thought it went really well. I mean, a lot of it went as planned. And then the day of the meet, just a few things weren't there. I still did really well. I mean, 734, I think, for the squat. Almost had a 2 times body weight bench press, which is one of my better. Actually, the bench was probably my best bench of any of my meets.
So was the bench the best lift of the day for you? Because that's never happened.
I would say it was. It was the one I was most happy about. So yeah, and then I missed all of my deadlifts. First one came up a little too fast, kind of whipped around on me at the top, and I still had some goals I wanted to do that day, and so we were pretty aggressive with the second attempt, which I don't regret at all. But I missed it; just couldn't get it off the floor.
Just so people get an idea, kind of like your strength, you cut down from like what 220-ish, 217
Yeah.
to like 198.
Yeah.
And then the deadlift that you say you pulled too fast and came out of your hand, how much weight was that?
That was we opened with 804. And
So you pulled 804 pounds too fast.
Correct.
yes, that's what that's kind of about what happened, and yeah, that happens. It's a problem sometimes.
So I coach primarily CrossFit athletes. I have a few powerlifters, not obviously as much as Jesse or at the caliber of the athlete Jesse has, but I feel like everybody has a bad meet, a bad performance, kind of, just nothing goes as planned for whatever reason, good, bad, and different. So what's the goal or game plan going forward to kind of put this meet behind you and start attacking and getting ready for the next one?
Well, I mean, it's always the same. Whether I hit all of my PRs and I did everything I wanted to do, or I bombed out, it's the same thing no matter what.
So what you're saying is you don't change everything drastically on the spur of a moment just because things don't always go as planned.
No.
I feel like you're not really asking.
Crazy.
That's a leading question.
So,
I
yeah,
feel
yeah.
it's a
It's a
leading,
leading
question.
But yeah, we just, no matter what after the meet, I talk to Jesse, talk to my training partners, and we make a plan for what we're going to do next. And it doesn't matter, what I did at the meet before. It's always about improving and finding, my weaknesses and trying to bring them up. And we found a few little weaknesses this last little training cycle is gonna be a quick turnaround. We have a meet in November 10th, Record Breakers that we're hosting. But
Are you doing that one?
I am.
Sweet.
I am.
Are you going to help me back spot and load in between lifts?
Of course.
I
I'm not
appreciate
gonna leave
that.
you back there on your own. Let you get all
Thank
the
you.
glory.
So I think it's a testament to Jesse and being around you a lot, and you getting coached by him in person all the time, for you to just kind of have the mindset of put the meet behind me, not much changes, focus on things you need to do better, but also just stick to what's gotten you to this point?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I first came to the Jesse, I think it was like maybe 2.5, 3 years ago, but we put about 400 pounds on my total. So I think one little, sort of bad meet didn't go as well as we wanted is not really a big deal in the grand scheme of things. It's a long journey in powerlifting. It's not going to happen, in 3 or 4 years or 5. It might be 10 or however long it takes, but I just really enjoy the process of getting stronger. Not always. Sometimes it can beat you down a little bit, but I do enjoy the process. So, yeah.
Now, I'm excited to hear that response because I remember before I left CSA, you had tweaked your back a little, I think maybe at the U.S. Open or right around there.
Yeah.
And you were incredibly discouraged to the point of I thought you were going to quit powerlifting just from conversations that we had, and you thought you were never going to get back to where you are. And now here we are, healthy for what I understand for the most part.
Yeah, and it's good because I hadn't experienced anything like that before. But now that I've experienced it, and had good people around me, Jesse to help me through it, and we found ways for me to do work, even though my back wasn't working so well for me. But yeah, I got to learn how to get through that, which I think everyone in any sport is going to have to learn how to get through injuries and get through downtimes. And it is definitely can be a kind of a mind trip, where you're having trouble lifting 50% of your max can take you for a loop. But now that I've experienced that before, I know that there's an end to it. There's a way to get back to where you were. So it's nice to know that there's a finish line.
Yeah, man, for sure.
Keegan and Jesse, so you guys are incredible coaches. What are some of the strategies you use on your athletes to kind of get them to overcome the mental barriers from a bad meet? What do you guys do?
Well, heading into a meet, I think it's all about, expectation management to start with. So going into a meet, we had high expectations for Jeremey for this meet. That's why we were aggressive and we did some of the things and took some of the attempts that we did because he's being a 220 and cutting down to 198. That's not something that you want to do a lot of. It's not necessarily a horrible experience, but you are suffering and it does take a toll on your body. So trying to keep a career mindset in the front of our head, thinking okay, cool, how many times can we really do this without negatively affecting him? We're only thinking 1, 2, maybe 3 here in a 2 or 3 year span. So just managing our expectations and going into things. And in Jeremy's case, this meet, going into the boss of barbell meet, he had a great training cycle heading in, and everything kind of looked up, and we were doing good. The cut wasn't too bad. He reconstituted his weight really, really well. And when it came to it, it was awful to be there and watch because nothing went our way. We couldn't. This is kind of normal. He loses everything. But we couldn't find wrist wraps. We couldn't find his sleeves. We couldn't find his singlet.
So worse than normal.
We couldn't keep water around. It was hot, he was just sweating, and I'm trying to keep him hydrated. It was just one of those things where we can't fucking catch a break. It's hey, I'm gonna go to the bathroom. Okay, cool. He goes to the bathroom and then 20 minutes later he comes back, and I'm okay, cool. We gotta start warming up. He goes, the line was too long. I didn't even get to go to the bathroom. We're we can't even take a piss right now and get it right. So it's one of those things, and then he finally goes and he does something perfect and right at the 804 with the deadlift, and he literally just pulled it so hard and so fast that it ended up just kicking him around and popping out of his hand. And at that point I was just oh my God. I was we can't get, we can hardly do anything right. Yet, after all that, he was really defeated. He was fuck it, I want to take this number. I said, okay, man, let's go. Let's roll with it. Let's just see what we can do. And it just didn't end up working out. And, Jeremey, going into the meet, we're hey, we're going to be aggressive. This is what we want to do. And there's just, there's no excuses for, kind of changing the plan up because it would have changed what we wanted to. And in all reality, he made, if he would have made his 804, which he could have if we would have retook it, he was still 50 pounds away from breaking the all-time world record total. So to have a terrible day where nothing at all goes right, it's a lot easier to kind of talk to your athlete and kind of talk them down and be like, hey, man, just one of those days. You know what I mean? He hasn't had one of those days before. And sometimes karma kind of creeps up on you, and you had some good luck and some good things happen. And sometimes it just happens, and that's just the way that it is. There was, I went home and I was just really kind of distraught and thinking about it. And I talked to our training partners, and I kind of just thought about things, and I was just like, Sean Shin's our other training partner. I was like, what do you think that we need to do different? What can we do better for Jeremey heading into this thing? Because Sean was now kind of starting the process to go, because he's headed into this too. He's like, I don't think there's anything. He goes, it just looked like he just had a bad day. And those things happen. And it's never easy to take, and it's never easy to try and convince someone that, it happens. It's just a bad day. We're like, fuck off, dude. I've been training for 3 goddamn months. I've crushed my body. I've alienated family members and my girlfriend. I haven't slept for the past week. I tried to cut 20 pounds, and then I had to put 25 pounds back on. It just happens. It's okay. It's okay. So, I mean, that's hard. But as long as you talk, and there's communication going into any sort of an event where it's like, look, this is what we're going to do. We're going to try and be smart. We're going to be, conservative. We're going to be aggressive, whatever it is. And as long as you guys are on the same page, we're like, hey, man, we rolled the dice. We wanted to go for this. If this would have happened, we were going to, it may not have just been in the cards for us anyways. But it was one of those things where, look, we weren't going to be there to total anything under 10 times body weight. And that's what we wanted. That's what we took at that second attempt, because that was goal 1. And then goal 2 was to break the all-time world record. Goal 3 was to break the all-time world record total and all-time world record deadlift. Still within 50 pounds of all that stuff on a really bad day. That's easy to take. Sometimes, sometimes nothing goes right, or people kind of just get on the platform and they look like completely unprepared. I'm like, it looks like you forgot how to squat. I don't know what happened to you. This isn't Jeremey that we're talking about.
Tiff.
But so it just happens
if you watch
to some
this.
people where, in the gym, they're great gym lifters, and then they get to a platform and everything is different.
And that's just a mental.
And it's just a mental thing. So what I try and do in training is I try and make everything harder and worse in training.
He's successful.
I'm very successful in that. So I want you to step on the platform and be like, wait, that's all I have to do? I'm like, fucking A, that's awesome. Let's go. I can do that. So that's why some of the programming that I do and some of the stuff that I do is going to challenge people, not only necessarily physically, but also mentally. Like, wait, I have to do that again? I'm like, yeah. And 4 more times after that. I'm like, God. It's like, but look, in 5 weeks, it's good. You only have to do it once. I'm like, okay, cool. So I think a lot of it just boils down to communication, expectation management between the coach and the lifter, and then a serious like, hey, let's sit down and talk about it. Like, what do you think happened? What do you feel happened? And when I talked to Jeremey, he's just like, it was just a bad day. I was like, I know, but do you think there's anything else we could have done? He's like, bro, I had a great training cycle. I had so much fun. Lifted a ton of weight, felt good. Everything was good, healthy, no injuries. You just get that sometimes. And other people, you're like, hey, man, this. Like, it really looked like you got on the platform and you freaked out. And it's like, we got to figure out a way for this not to affect you so much that it spirals you out of control. So whether that's talking to a mental coach, whether that's you just chilling the fuck out, whether that's us lowering your openers next time, it's one of those things. So as long as there's good communication, I think it's easy to just say like, hey, we kind of talked about this happened. It's not the end of the world. There's more meets to come. Let's get you kind of, give you a little bit of time to heal up and, take a little time off. And then we're going to go after the next one.
I think the managing expectations from the beginning is probably the best way throughout the whole process to like not control, but like have your lifter or athlete or whatever sport they're in understand kind of the process they're going through. So then if things don't go as planned, you have an expectation point you can go back to and be like, this is what we wanted to do. It didn't happen for X, Y, or Z, or it did happen for X, Y, or Z. It's kind of like, to use an analogy, it's kind of like a squat, like we were talking about earlier. Like when you start in good positions and do things right from the beginning, chances are the whole thing going smoothly is better than if you just kind of step out of the rack, dive bomb into the bottom and come out. So it's kind of like if you start properly, you'll end properly. And that doesn't mean you're going to crush your meat, you're going to hit all your goals. But I think, CrossFit specifically, it's a lot more subjective. I don't know if that's the word I'm looking for, but like powerlifting, you're going to do squat, bench, and deadlift. Equipment's going to be a little different than what you're used to, but you know exactly what you're going there to do. Where CrossFit, you're kind of at the mercy of the people that are running the competition and what they think is fitness. So it's kind of hard sometimes to talk to athletes when they're like, oh man, I'm crushing it. I'm doing really well. I went to a competition. I got crushed. It's like, well, what have we been working on? Like, what have our expectations been for this training cycle to get you better? And just because you went to a competition that didn't necessarily have movements or workouts that targeted the things you were training doesn't mean you did bad. It just wasn't necessarily the best situation or whatever you want to call it at that time. It doesn't mean you're not fit. It doesn't mean you're not progressing. It just means that there's probably more things you need to work on, and also B, like there's so many things in CrossFit that you can do that just because some dude sitting behind his computer at night after work writing up workouts doesn't mean that defines you as an athlete because you didn't do good at them. And I kind of rambled, so I don't know if that made sense.
It made sense, but is it, in your experience, from my observation is purely anecdotal, it just seems like CrossFitters are head cases.
I think they are, and I think to a degree the sport makes them that way because it's not as quantifiable or whatever word you want to use as weightlifting or powerlifting, where there's 3 movements or 2 movements. You know how many attempts you get. You can make the decision on what weights you use. So there's a little more control, I think, for the athlete and the coach in powerlifting and weightlifting, where in CrossFit it's totally up to the director of the meet or whatever you want to call it. So when you spend a year like really building up, somebody's strength with the barbell and making them more efficient with snatch, clean and jerk, deadlift, etc., and then you go to regionals and there's no barbell and only dumbbells, it's not bad or good on anyone's part. It's just how it is, and that's just the sport. And you need to recognize that like you still got better at the stuff you trained, and then you get this curveball and it doesn't make you a bad athlete. It doesn't make you less of an athlete. It doesn't make you anything other than you prepared one way and another thing was thrown at you. And I think there's, as you can see from the games, because generally the same people year after year go, there's a very small subset of people that can basically attack weaknesses or train any way they want, and they're still going to do good in all of those areas of open regionals games. And I think it's unrealistic for people to think that just because they see Matt Frazier doing Fran and they do Fran in their gym or their garage gym, that like they're not Matt Frazier. Like your Fran time could be better than Matt Frazier's. You're still not Matt Frazier.
Yeah, it just seems like from the outside. I mean, I'm not a coach, obviously, but CrossFit coaches often have an uphill battle to you get the people that are really into it to instill the discipline in them to back off and you can't go balls to the wall all the time.
Right.
You can't leave yourself, bloody on the floor and expect to improve. And it just seems like
it's the same.
It's
more movements, but the same idea as powerlifting. Like you can't in CrossFit, you can't do Fran every day at 100%. You can't do max calories on a bike. You can't row a 500 meter for time every single day because at some point you're going to fucking die. It's just like Jeremey can't deadlift 850 every day. It's just not possible.
Let's actually hold there for a second. So, Jeremey, you came to me, what was your deadlift? And you were at like 198. It was 718?
711.
711. How many times?
It would be 711.
That makes a lot of sense, actually. When you were doing your cycle and you were doing your own stuff, how many times a week were you deadlifting?
Twice. Probably twice, pretty heavy, too.
Yeah. Pretty heavy.
Yeah.
So when you finally gave up and you're like, okay, cool, I'm going to let this fat bald guy help me out here, what did I change the most? How many times a week did you deadlift?
He's leading you into this answer.
Well, once, and not just that. We only pulled sumo once a month. We only pull heavy conventional once a month. We only squat heavy twice a month. And I was definitely like, all right.
And your deadlift went up to
my deadlift went up to 840 pounds.
Right.
Like, pretty quick.
By not deadlifting.
So
that's kind of, it's one of those things
very
where
zen.
it is, you can't, if there's a wall in front of you, you have two choices. You can try and just break it by running your head into it, or you can kind of walk around it. The choice is going to be up to you, and if you're smart enough, you figure out the movements and when to structure these things and put them together and how each one of them sequence, in a line headed towards any sort of meet. And you can kind of do a little bit of an end around. It's not going to necessarily be easy work, just as easy as walking around something, but you can avoid a lot of, headaches and a lot of, and a lot of injuries. So, I mean, when Jeremy came to the gym and he was like, hey, I want to work out here, but I'm going to do my own stuff going in. It's like, fine. I mean, he would come in and this is kind of normal for a training cycle with Jeremy, I learned, but I had to kick him out of the gym like 2 or 3 times when he was doing his own stuff because he would beat himself up so bad that he would come in and he missed a 300-pound bench press. And I was just like, I think it's time for you to go home. And he's just like, no, I'm gonna try it again. I'm like, all right. And he misses again. I'm like, maybe it's time for you to leave. He's like, yeah, you know what? I'm gonna just take off. I'm like, cool. And then he would come back. And then he came back the next day, and then he would try and deadlift 500, and he wouldn't be able to pull 500. Where the week before he did 750 for a triple. We're like, this is just not your day. Why don't you head home? So I mean, sometimes less is more. As long as you know where you're going and you know how to kind of sequence things and put things together, you can go ahead and take advantage of not necessarily having to kill yourself all the time. We selectively kill Jeremy throughout the month.
And I learned a lot of this when I was at CSA from Jesse, and I think it's a testament to him as a coach that he actually takes the time to get to know his athletes. Like maybe he doesn't know every little thing about them and doesn't hang out with them outside of the gym, but through, communications, little conversations here and there, he kind of gets to know, what, their mannerisms, their posture, like how they look when they come in, if they look like they're, ready to rock and roll, or if they kind of look like dog shit. And he doesn't have so much pride or ego that it's like, well, dude, you got to do what's on the board because that's what's on the board. It's kind of like, ooh, like you're moving like shit today. Like, let's change it up. Maybe you should go home. Like, we'll take the percentages down. Like, it's not just because it's written on the board, it's not set in stone. And you got to kind of mold to your athletes sometimes with how they feel, how they look, the things they say. So you actually have to kind of give a shit. And I think that whole giving a shit leads into, the athletes trusting you, which helps with managing expectations, which also helps with you talking to them after a bad event, a bad meet, a bad game, like whatever sport you compete in. So I think building that relationship, it doesn't have to be super personal. You don't got to go to dinner. You don't got to go grab coffee with people, but just paying attention and not just being like, well, you're here to train. There's the board, go do what it says and see you later. Like you actually have to talk to those people. And I think that's something Jesse does really well. And I've trained with Jeremy for a year. And just cause he's here, we can you could tell sometimes Jeremy'd walk in, be 45 minutes late, look a little flustered, didn't have half his gear. And it wasn't go get your fucking gear and do what's on the board. It was all right, maybe if Jeremy does everything that says today, Jeremy's going to get hurt, and nobody wants Jeremy to get hurt. You don't want any of your athletes to get hurt. So it's all right, dude, just hit some reps on the bench today, do some back, hit some shoulders, go home. And it'd be all right, cool.
Yeah, just to piggyback on what Keegan was saying, one of probably the best things I learned from Jesse is figuring out what's the intent of today's workout. Is it just to do what's on the board, or our goals today is to work on this specific movement, or to get something heavy in our hands, or to work on speed, or to work on lockout? And there's a lot of different ways to do those things. There's not just one way. So, it's easy to kind of just look at the numbers and things like that and just kind of go through them. But I think it's the one thing that definitely learned from Jesse is not just to do the workouts on the board, but the intent behind it, the reason why we're doing it. So it's good to kind of keep that in the back of the head.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because I do think sometimes people get their program emailed or, online or in a blog or, however you decide to get your program, you do it yourself. But I think knowing your purpose for that day at the gym is very helpful, because then it's okay, generally within your first movement or two, if you're in powerlifting, you're generally knocking out your quote unquote intent for the day. And then your accessories kind of mimic those movements to some degree, or help build up the movements that you were just doing, whatever your weaknesses are. So being able to know okay, I knocked out what the plan was, and then there's some accessory stuff. I feel like shit. not going to do the accessories today. I feel great. Got to do the accessories today. Like, so it's kind of knowing that you did what you were supposed to. And then if you have the energy or whatever to do stuff on top of that, great. And if you don't, like, not saying skip your accessory work every day, because it's incredibly important, but there's days where it's like, just go home, man. Like, you didn't sleep good. You're not eating good. Whatever the case is, like, it's not going to make or break you to go home today, but it might break you if you stay here. Again, I rambled. Sorry.
No, it's good. And I think that it's something that I try to talk about as nicely as I can, and that's the difference between coaching and programming. And, you know, I do online, you know, distance coaching, distance programming, whatever you want to call it. But, you know, I'm becoming more adept of calling that programming, because in my opinion, I think coaching is going to be very, very, it has to be one-on-one. And, you know, even if you're even like Skyping or, you know, a coach session, you have to have someone's eyes on you in order to really go through this. And, you know, it all, again, kind of boils down to communication. You know, some of the higher level lifters that I get to work with, I'm like, look, I'm going to send this to you, and it's going to be up to you to get out of me whatever you want. And it's like the people who get the most out of this text me like 8 times a day, send me videos, I look at it, you get feedback, and you kind of go from there. If you don't want to do that, that's cool. I'll just send you this stuff, and you can go, and we can talk about it later. But, you know, coach is someone, again, like Keegan was saying, who sees you walk in the door, talks to you, figures out where you are going to kind of go, and kind of pushes you here and there, holds you back when you have to, pushes you forward when you have to, and go from there. You know, we kind of keep... The general case here is where we keep talking about holding people back and saying, hey, maybe don't do this. But there's a really good case of Keegan when he was lifting with us, when he's squatting or when he was deadlifting.
Good point.
And he had an issue of whether it was the number of plates on the bar, the number of pounds that was on the bar, or just something that was there. And he was just like, I'm gonna stop here. It's like, absolutely not. So not only do you need to know when to hold people back, but you need to know how to and when to say, no, you're gonna keep going. You're riding with us. Wheels. We got to keep going today. Today you're gonna squat 500. Today you're gonna squat whatever. Like, really? It's like, dude, you look great. Let's just ride. Like, take another one. Let's see how it goes. Okay, and he hits it. That felt pretty good. I was like, yeah, I know. Let's keep going. Let's keep going. One more? Like, yeah, sure, one more. And then he hits it, and Jeremy's like, dude, that was fucking great. Awesome. He's like, guys, let's go another one. So, I mean, you got to understand, you know, how to motivate people and, you know, right. Also at the same time be able to kind of hold them back. But Keegan was dealing with a lot of injuries. So our goal with him was to get him used to things, get him strong. And when we could press on the gas, we would. And then when it was one of those times where he kind of looks over and shakes his head, like, okay, cool, man. I'm okay with you holding back. You tried. You took a step towards that line, and you're like, yeah, just not today. I'm like, okay, cool. It could have been physical. It could have been mental, but he was just completely shut off to it. But there are times where it's just like he's moving well, and even though he may say, like, no, it's time to roll. We have to go ahead and push you. And you do have to kind of get those athletes to where it is one of those times where it's like, look, I know you're not having a good day. I need you to buckle your ass down and figure out a way to just make this happen. It's like, I'm not asking a lot out of you. I need this rep from you. Take care of this, and we're done. You understand? Yeah. Awesome. Let's go.
So just to hammer home what Jesse's talking about specifically, when I first went there, my best deadlift was probably 495, and there was definitely some sort of mental block where 500 pounds was like, it's not moving. Like, I could do 495 for a triple. 500 wasn't moving an inch off the ground. I'd do things differently. I'd be in my head. I'd be thinking about my back blown out or my spine blown out of my ass or something like that.
All really good thing. You know, when they tell you to visualize, these are great things to
take a second to think about that.
Yeah.
And then one of the things that helped a ton was the environment that Jesse created within the gym. So I'm there deadlifting with Jesse, Jeremey, Sean, Kyle, Andrew, and there's everybody, you know, 600, 700, or Kyle's, you know, 220, 215 UFC fighter deadlifting, you know, low fives, high fours. And it's like, okay, like, I need to get my fucking ass in gear, and they're not being a pussy. I can't be a pussy. So I think within the matter of 3-4 months, my deadlift went from 495 to hitting 601 in Jesse's meet. And I mean, there were some technical things like doing a hook grip for me probably wasn't the best idea. So like adding a mixed grip, like I think we put 45 pounds on my deadlift, like literally that day. So like it. Yes, the coaching and the push was huge, but it was also the environment he created at his gym to have the people around me that I was like, I didn't want to let him down. I didn't want to look like a bitch. Like a lot of things went into that, but at the same time, Jesse wasn't gonna let me put like 700 pounds on the bar to like prove my manhood because that would just be fucking stupid. So it wasn't like it was just some Neanderthal, let's throw weights on a bar and just see who can like stand, like last man standing. Like it was very specific to what I needed, but it was also a great environment where I needed to push myself to where I could go to get stronger.
Yeah, the environment that you train in is huge. It's like everything. Having consistency, training with the same people for years. You know, they've seen you squat thousands of times. They've seen you deadlift thousands of times. They've seen you do these movements more than you have ever seen yourself do them. So that's like, for me, you know, Joe Schmo comes up to you in the gym and he wants to give you some advice because he saw you lift once. You're like, all right, fuck off. But when somebody you're training with, you know, for years and years says it to you, it holds weight because you trust them. They've seen you lift so much, you know, so more than you've seen yourself lift. So it's easy to just, you have that trust there, so you can take the advice and actually put it into practice immediately or very soon. Works well.
That was probably one of my better coaching moments with you, where we to be able
The mixed grip?
The mixed grip. It's like, let's just try and not hook grip it and let's see how it feels. And then just 545 just ripped right off the floor. It's like, hey, did everybody see how smart I was? Did everyone catch that? Like, that was 50 pounds in one sentence.
I wish there was a camera on my face at that time because I feel like I would have had a really shocked, surprised look on my face with how that weight was.
As it was going up, you're like, oh. It was kind of shock, amazement, and also kind of like, fuck, I'm going to have to do more now.
That definitely went through my head. It was definitely like, oh, well, I've done it, and now I need to keep doing it.
Well,
so I think, Jeremy, I would kind of like you, if you don't mind, to wrap up the podcast. And what I would like from you is 3 gas station staples that you have in your diet for what we'll call max effort, lower body days. So that would be squat or deadlift for Jeremy, generally on a Tuesday. Jeremy's a big proponent of gas station food. It's incredibly anabolic because there's so many preservatives in it, and it's obviously worked wonders for Jeremy. So if there's ever an expert on how to get big on a budget, I would say it's Jeremy.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's so many options to go with here.
But also
I don't want to hold you back with 3. If there's some really solid staples in there, I want the people to know where your head's at when you're going into that kind of stuff.
Maybe what we can do to kind of really gauge this is like run of the mill gas station to like super 7-Eleven.
Yeah.
Right? To like, you know what I mean? Just like the 7-Eleven buffet is there, or it's just a, you know, mom and pop
All
deal.
right, let's start with like a
Sheets
little
of
shitty convenience store that you
Yeah.
don't want to stop at, but you're crunched for time and you don't have a choice.
Yeah, definitely not all gas station food is created equally. And I'm working on an app right now to show people which gas stations to go to. But if we're just talking about, you know, little shitty gas station side of the road, we definitely go beef jerky, Rockstar, Copenhagen. That's pretty. I mean, it's pretty solid. I mean, they're most likely going to have those things. Now, if they don't have the Copenhagen, I guess maybe you can go. I guess
Skull?
Grizzly. Come on,
Grizzly before Skull? Oh my God.
Grizzly.
What specific kind of Copenhagen?
Long cut. None of that flavored stuff. If you're doing the flavored stuff, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah, it's like coffee. You can't
regular
flavor
long
your
cut.
coffee.
Yeah, don't do all that. Don't do all that. Now, if we're going to like a nice gas station, like someone that you might bring on a date, you know,
So we're talking take a girl on a date gas station food.
here's what you do. So a lot of places you get your hot dog. They also usually have nachos, but instead of you that cheese is free. You can go ham with that cheese.
I bet a lot of people didn't know that.
No, not a lot of people do. So you get your hot dog, your gas station hot dog. You got to melt that thing down with some cheese, and then maybe a chocolate milk. If your stomach can handle it, it takes a lot of practice. I mean, you might want to start off with the water if you're not hip to the gas station game. But I might go chocolate milk, nacho cheese hot dog, some beef jerky, and a Rockstar, something along those lines.
So you keep throwing out beef jerky. What's the go-to beef jerky for Jeremy? Does it matter?
Jack Link's hot and spicy. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on
sweet and hot? Sweet and hot, I should say. Sorry.
What are your thoughts on Slim Jims?
I think Slim Jims are really underrated. I think if you're in a pinch, that's going to be at the other gas station. That's like a second tier item I would grab if they're out of all the first things I mentioned. But Slim Jims are pretty good. Got a lot of sodium in there. Give you a nice good bloat. More of a squat day thing. I think we're talking deadlift.
Maybe a bench day.
Yeah, squat and bench Slim Jims I think are going to be a pretty solid choice. Along with Lunchables, there's a surprising amount of sodium in Lunchables. And then, one that I actually learned a long time ago from Jesse before I even maybe knew him was Doritos, because your body doesn't know what to do with it. It just stays. It just hangs out. You keep that bloat forever. So that's also a good choice.
So since we laid out some recommendations, is there anything people should definitely stay away from at a gas station, or is it all pretty much good to go?
Sushi just
Sushi,
jumps
I
out
was
right
gonna
to me.
say the sushi.
Like, I think that, like, if you're gonna go ahead, like, you either have to hate yourself or hate where you're going. Like, if there's a wedding that you don't want to go to,
Eat some gas station sushi.
Gas station sushi is gonna really kind of just make it about the odds are not tipped in your favor that you're gonna have a good night.
Sushi's a risky play.
Yeah.
It's a risky play for sure. But to have something like that, if it worked out, I mean, that'd be pretty sweet. But the chances are very, very low.
Any beverages to stay away from besides decaffeinated ones?
I try to stay away from water. Not a lot of calories in there. So I try to definitely stay away from water. You don't want to fill your stomach up with wasted room. So, I mean, I would definitely recommend something a little more calorically dense. Or if you are going to have water, mix something into it, maybe.
So you would take Rockstar and milk over water based on calories.
Well, I mean, Rockstar is mostly water. So, I mean, we're kind of just beating a dead horse by getting water with it, right?
Sound advice from Jeremy.
There you go.
But yeah, I think we can wrap that up unless you guys got anything else you want to discuss, go
We're all
over.
good. Thanks for having us. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, thanks for being here, guys. All
Always
Yeah,
a
cool.
good
Thank
time
you,
to
gentlemen.
be able to sit down and talk with you guys.
Yep. Thanks for having us, guys.
right, cool. We're out.
All right, later.
Bye.
Bye.